Hey everybody, it's August 31st, 2023. It's a day after Hurricane Idalia made landfall around the Perry area, which is 30 minutes east of us. So we pretty much came out unscathed, except for some downed trees. Still no power, probably won't have power for 7 to 14 days is kind of the rumor going around. But killing two birds with one stone. It's been almost a year since we did an overview of the property. I think the first YouTube video I posted was early September last year. So now that it's a year later, figured, again, kill two birds with one stone, do an overview and just show you what we really dealt with, which was nothing compared to the people on the coast. This is the entrance to the neighborhood. There were, I think, 3 of these trees. Somebody else said they're wax myrtles. There were 3 here. The other 2 fell throughout the year, and now this one fell during the storm. These things have been rotting from the roots, so no big deal. But again, this is the entrance to the neighborhood. One of the projects that I did was I continued our fence. This was the only fence. When we first bought the property, there were a couple pier pilings or telephone poles that were there. The gates didn't even touch. So one of the first things that we had to do to secure the property, because people were still driving on the property because they didn't know it was sold, we had to put this gate in. And again, I think the old video even talked about how the week after we got it done, a delivery truck dropping off grass seed caught the gate and ripped that whole thing out of the ground. So kind of funny to see it now and how it's progressed, but looks really good. It's the service entrance. Looking up here, this is what they call South Run Road. As you guys have heard in previous videos, this is really our nemesis because the storm ditch here, again, there are culverts there that allow that water to come this way. But the idiots that put those in didn't take into account that there is a hump here and on that side, so there's no way for that water to get there. Same thing here, no way for this water to get there. You know, I've talked about this stuff before. Again, these videos are really a video diary for Emily and I and the people that buy the land after we're long gone. Hopefully they find these videos and they can see what it started out as. Again, this being my nemesis, what happens is when this backs up due to the hump, it goes over there onto our property, which, as you guys know, if you've been watching the videos, is where I put in that small culvert that worked again like a champ during the storm. We'll go up here, look at some of the progress from the past year. More for nostalgia. If you see the video from a year ago, that's the photograph that shows on, I guess, the home screen of the YouTube video. Up here, nothing's really changed. I think all this was done prior to me shooting YouTube videos. But this little pathway here, it's where our city water is. Thank goodness we have city water. Otherwise, if we were on a well, we wouldn't have water right now. Because again, the power's still out. But I've rebuilt all that, so just a nice little view of how much better that looks compared to what it used to look like. But you can see some downed trees over there. So up here at the northern part of the property, these river birch trees, they lose limbs like cats losing hair. So that's pretty typical of any rainstorm. But as we get up here, if you guys have seen the video from last week, the culverts held up really well, or the new mitered concrete ends, I should say, not new culverts. But they did real well, held up good. The amount of rain, again, this was a river coming down this. And the good news is most of the water was in the storm ditch now because Nick cut out on that little hump up there around that live oak, and now the water flows even more down here versus along the road. But this did real well. held up really good. I'm coming through the main entrance. You can see there's just some limbs down. When you really think about the amount of land that we have, I guess if you thought about kind of ratios, like amount of acreage to debris, we really turned out really good. Because I've had a 1 acre piece of property that's had this much damage in a storm. So to have this much debris to have to clean up out of 32 acres isn't really anything to really whine about, which still work. But this this pine tree here, I had really considered cutting it down before just because it was so tiny. These things, I guess everybody says they're volunteer pines. They just snap in this wind. I mean, they're like toothpicks. So one snap there, which the good thing I really didn't focus on trying to get this to look perfect. Kind of learned my lesson to let Mother Nature kind of do its thing for a while. Over here on this side, same thing. Had a couple of the volunteer pines snap. One of these pines was really even kind of hanging that way anyways. So if you look at the previous videos, you can see how that thing was like almost at a 45-degree angle. Another tree down back there, but I won't really worry about cleaning it up. My culvert's held up great. Come down here and take a look at this stuff. If you watched yesterday's video, I talked about the tree that needed to come down that fell across the driveway. Emily just used the tractor and pushed all this out of the way. I did part of it, but she kind of finished it up. So this is the other reason I had to go into town this morning and go buy a new toy for the farm. Let's do the size of those logs. I had an 18-inch chainsaw that would have done this. But when we go down there and see some of the trees, we're gonna see how big they are. And I had to go get a 25-inch chainsaw. A lot of little sticks down over here. So again, nothing to complain about. Happens during a normal storm. It's just part of being out here. Now we're at the other side of the service entrance. So all we've done is a great big loop up and back down the driveway. What I think is really interesting to see is watch the old videos and see what this storm ditch used to look like. There was no way we were ever going to be able to maintain that or mow it. This was one of the first big projects that I think I started filming that you guys got sick of watching. I think it was 2 months of just taking buckets of dirt from down there, which is what I call my crop circles, and bringing them up here. So one bucket at a time, trying to fill in this ditch and smooth it out. It's probably been one of my prouder projects because I never did anything like this before in my life. So just trying to eyeball it and watch, again, the weather. Like I said, getting in a hurry up there makes no sense because I learned my lessons down here trying to get it done as fast as possible. You learn to let Mother Nature kind of do some of the work for you, and you just help it along. So planted the bald cypress there. Love this guy. Again, our falling bald cypress. And then these other bald cypress, I think, are ones that we got from Nick DeCersey, our electrician. So they look great. This is the other dead tree that I wish kind of would have come down in the storm, but I didn't want it to hit one of our expensive bald cypress. So part of me is glad it didn't come down. The other part's kind of like, darn it, now I got to figure out how to get that down myself at some point. But we're going to have to use ropes. That way we try to get it to fall exactly where, because it's obviously leaning where we don't want it to go. There's a dead pine tree there that eventually needs to come out. It could have fallen during the storm, but didn't. Slowly swinging along here. You can see the grass finally really started to take off. It's been a battle because it's been really hot and really dry the past 6 weeks. But over there, really nothing fell. The bees, as you guys saw in the previous video, turned out fine. So no issues with bees. As we come down here towards the barn, it's going to get a little noisy because the generators are running. Again, we'll be without power for about 7 to 14 days. Again, not really much to complain about. Yesterday, after the storm passed, that's when I was doing a little quick walk around and showing you some of the damage. But our neighbor over here, when we're walking down there, everybody was outside standing in the road. So being a nosy neighbor, I went down to make sure everybody's all right and see what was going on. And they had a tree fall on the roof and go all the way through the roof and ceiling of their house. And talking to them, other neighbors showed up and everybody said they were going to get together and try to remove the trees. So when you saw the video yesterday and I told you trees were falling back over there, that's where the trees landed, was on top of Tim's house. So I spent about an hour and a half helping him clean it up, or part of it. And then people showed up with a larger tractor that had a grapple on it. So I was kind of calling it quits. As I was leaving his property, I got stung on the knuckle by a yellow jacket. That thing really did a number on me. I was having an allergic reaction to it last night. My whole arm was swollen and just throbbing with pain, and I didn't have any Benadryl and every place was closed. So obviously I survived. Here's that crazy tree that I eventually got to get down. It's obviously leaning this way towards us, but there's that limb holding it up there. So it has to come down. But I'm just gonna have to get ropes up as high as possible and pull the ropes with the tractor that way. Again, the barn, the RV, nothing moved during the storm. Again, all the wind was coming this way during the main part of it. So it was blocked mostly by, the barn. People ask me all the time what it's like to go through a hurricane that don't live in Florida. I've never luckily been hit with a direct hit. This is probably the closest I've ever been to the eye of the storm. But just watching how these things turn out, the only way I can describe it is that, like, the eye of the storm is probably going to be like the worst tornado you've ever had. The downside is it's not going to just dissipate real quick. It's coming through and it's making a straight line. It's going to go on for a couple hours, depending on how quick it's moving. Once you're outside that eye of the storm, man, it's just the worst thunderstorm you've ever been in. But it's the worst thunderstorm you've ever been in, and it lasts, typically 5 to 6 hours, sometimes even longer, again, depending on how fast it goes. So I don't know, the worst part of it is the anticipation to it. Do we leave? Do we not leave? Where's this thing going? Have we secured all of our stuff enough? So it's the buildup to it that's always the worst for most people, I think, or at least for me, because I've been lucky enough for this to be the worst of the damage. Again, this thing couldn't have landed in a better spot. Loquat tree. Emily wants to do something with this log, but again, due to the diameter of this guy, I'm not even sure a 25-inch saw will make it in one cut. I may have to cut 2 different sides of it, but that's a massive, easily 2 foot in diameter tree. So it's going to be close. Again, get Wes over here with his grapple. That way he can just pick up big logs. Some of this will cut up and let my Aunt Pam have some firewood, but that guy's obviously green, so it's going to have to wait a while. Just a real quick shout out to one of Emily's co-workers, John Davis. I guess you're watching these videos and you ask Emily all these questions, which is great. If you think of something else I should videotape, or questions you have, let me know, because I'm always, there are days out here where I'm not really doing anything but bush hogging and weed eating, and I'm like, I really need to think of something to talk about for a day. So John Davis, thanks for watching. Aunt Carolyn, thanks for watching. Most of you probably don't realize, like, we've all got issues, but there's a point to this. Like my dad, we're still not talking. So I guess the good news is, if my dad wants to know I'm okay, he can watch these YouTube videos. But unfortunately, last I knew, Dad's not watching these videos. And it's kind of funny. If you guys know the story, I think you can figure out the meaning to all that. It's just really weird. But those of you that do watch, appreciate it. Pretty cool. Those of you that don't, you know, if you want, like and subscribe. It's more of a video diary, like I said, for Emily and I. But back here, had a smaller water oak fall. This water oak, you can see the root ball fell a while ago. Again, I think that's a water oak. Yeah, it's a water oak. That guy split. Again, these things rot from the inside out, so it's hollow, but I'd rather see that, like a broke off stump, than to see these great big root balls sticking in the air. So now that I've got this larger chainsaw, I can cut the tree trunks down. Hopefully get Wes over here with his grapple. And I think we're just gonna have to start piling up these things, or learning to live with the eyesore that they kind of create, in my opinion. But again, 32 acres. The amount of damage that we have, or debris that we have to clean up. Again, no damage, but it's really not that bad. Oh, one of my little trees fell down here. This is where I was trying to clean up this area. This is where our beaver pond and beaver dam is at. It's still holding water, so nothing catastrophic looks like it happened back here, except for these little trees snapping. When I went out onto Old Lloyd Road out here, one of our trees, it's really part of the county easement, fell and has landed on the bridge. It's not big enough to have done any damage, but they're gonna have to go clean that up. But other than that, like I said, trees are down. We're safe and sound, probably without power for a week, but it could be a lot worse. So we did pretty good surviving Hurricane Idalia out here at Deer Run Farm.